Welcome back to the Exercise of the Week with our exercise coordinator, Charlie Merlot. Charlie, what you got for us today?
All right, so today we're going more into the machine realm of side of things. So kind of go into that category. And
I'm glad to see that you would actually venture into the machines. And not that you don't know how to use them, you do.
Right.
But you're so ingenious about your exercises and making everything so functional that out of all of our staff here, I think I would have to say you use probably the least amount of machines. But even Charlie sees the benefits in them. So.
And I do spend most of my time on the loud side. I will admit, but,
exactly.
You know, I do have a special place in my heart for machines because you know, as a young teenager starting out in my crunch fitness back home, I spent a lot of time on the machine. So,
I'm sure. Well, and the whole idea of a machine is to make the exercise easier to do. And so, and the ergonomics we have, you know, Cybex spent a lot of time on the ergonomics. So did Sport Art and all these different equipment here. So it's going to put you into a form where you're not going to hurt yourself and make it actually easier to get the exercise. A lot of people think, well, it makes the exercise easier. No, you can make it extremely hard, but it's just it's a safer way. And also, even I like them for finishing exercises. You're totally exhausted. You know that muscle that you're working on is not completely done. So I'm going to lock everything down in a machine where I don't have a chance of hurting something else and just focus on this exercise.
Right.
And the one you've got today is a great example of that.
Most definitely. So today we're talking about the weighted crunch machine.
Right, okay.
And this one, you know, I could almost throw this one into like our non-traditional category because, you know, it's not one people tend to think about. I think it often kind of gets forgotten about. I think it might get a little dusty, but no, I'm just playing. But you know, the weighted crunch machine. So a little bit of history about this. So
we may be here for days if we get into that.
You know, I got to talk about my history. Okay, going back to like Nautilus, and we talked about them when they started developing the weight machines and coming out with that. And this was really just one of the popular requested machines that came out whenever they were discovering all these different ways. How can we turn this specific exercise into a machine? They had come out, you know, with the chest press and the lat pull down and all these different rowing machines, but they're like, well, how can we make one for the abs? You know, like how can we target the abs?
Because you know as well as I do, if you have a gut on you, you just do a bunch of abs and it goes flat. Right?
Oh yeah, I mean that's the best way to do it, right?
Commonly held myth.
Right,
myth.
Does not work.
But exactly. Definitely important body part to work.
It is,
but it doesn't do what we think it does.
Right,
that goes. So, and I'm sure that was a driver behind Nautilus. One we've got to have in there is the first Nautilus set that I ever worked out on. Yeah, third or fourth machine, ab machine.
Yeah, and I mean for marketing, I'm sure it's great. You know,
very
it's
much
like, okay,
so.
we need to load up the abs. It's going to give me that six pack. I've
Yeah,
always
exactly.
wanted to know. So,
exactly.
But yeah, so Nautilus kind of started it off, and then again, it continued to become more of just a mainstay in most of your gyms. And so,
and there's several variations of it too. So
yeah, there is.
So you're going to talk about, well, we got the one on the video, the one we have here, but there's several variations of that machine too.
Right. Yeah. You can train it in several different ways, but starting out, you know, why do a weighted crunch? You know, and specifically with the machine,
right?
We kind of talked about the reason for, like, it's a great finisher. You know, if you're tired, it keeps your form safe. But you know, most people might just ask, you know, well, why do I have to use weight? Why don't I do sit-ups or planks, you know, or crunches? Why do I have to load my abs? And I would, you know, argue, kind of push back a little bit. It's like, well, don't you load all your other muscles too?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, why are your abs different than your back or your chest or your legs?
Well, think about it. It's one of the dense muscles. I mean, we've got trapezius, you've got the heart, what a lot of people don't think of, but you've got trapezius, you've got forearms, you've got abdominals, you've got calves. You know, rarely does anybody do 5 repetitions of an abdominal, of a calf raise, even of shrugs. They're high, your neck too. High repetitions. Why? It's a very dense muscle, so you need to really penetrate it. So obviously it can handle a lot of strength. You know, it is your core. It's extremely strong. So why not load it up?
Right. Yeah. So, you know, why not load it up? Why not challenge it? Because, I mean, over time, you know, you're going to get to a point where, you know, sit-ups, crunches, planks, I call it the point of diminishing returns, right? So you're getting benefit up into the point where it's like, all right, now I'm just kind of wasting my breath. You know, I'm really not getting as much out of it as the time I'm putting in. And so let's use something that's a little more efficient, so that way for the time I'm spending, I'm getting more bang for my buck. And so,
and this is, and I love, excuse me for interrupting, but this is, I love the idea behind this, because you're talking from, you know, we have a lot of folks that come in, I do free weights, I don't do machines. It's kind of like, you know, I use a car, not a boat. You know what I mean? They're different modes of transportation, different things you use them for. And a lot of I would say athletes or purists in exercise would stay away from machines. This is making a strong argument for using this machine because of being able to add the wrist, because adding that load to it. Exactly.
And so, like loading the abs is a great way to really, I mean, we talk about the abs is like the core, we call it the core, right? The central area where all of your power comes from. And so, let's say we have someone who comes in and, their core is not very strong. I think this is a great place to start them, especially after we've kind of gone through like sit-ups, crunches, planks, and they're not really getting anything out of that. Transitioning to something where we can load it a little more. And, go into the athletes. I mean, this isn't something that they probably really have at their school, right? Like not every school has a weighted crunch machine. So if they come in, this is just another tool that we can use to kind of add into their program to be a piece of their program where if, they're kind of weak in their core, we're noticing a lot of collapse when they're doing, squats or whatever, then that could be something that we say, hey, this is somewhere we can target to try to see some progression here.
And you were talking about, we're making a strong argument for athletes using machines, using something like this machine, which they may shy away from because it's just not hard enough. They're a purist. Like I said, well, you've made that strong case, but there's the other side of it too. Back in, I'll never forget this, a mistake I made back in 92 when I was working with a senior client, and I was running this program, and I had this program with like machine crunches. And I was thinking, why don't we just get on the floor and do some abdominal work? Well, I found out why. He couldn't do a sit-up. He could barely do a crunch. Well, I was able to, and plus getting on the floor was difficult for him. So sitting down in a chair situation like we've got here with our ab machine, sitting on that was very easy, and I could drop the weight way down. So it was actually far easier. That it started something he could actually maneuver. He could actually do 15 or 20 of them, but it was a lighter weight, you know. And then of course I can progress him all the way up to where those athletes are. So that's kind of the other side of it. So that's another big benefit to it.
Yeah, most definitely. Like you said, I mean, because you might not be able to do a sit-up, but you actually can lighten the weight towards lighter than a sit-up,
Yeah,
so
very much so.
That's the other side of the spectrum is it allows you to, if you can't do a sit-up, you can start there, you know, with 10 pounds, and it's really lighter than what you would be doing if you were doing a sit-up.
Which we do a lot of
that's a good point. That's a really good point. But it's also easier to isolate the abs.
Very much so,
anytime you're doing just an ab exercise, sit up or crunch, you can use some momentum, right? You can kind of swing and use some momentum, but this allows you to eliminate the momentum swing. So where you're really just focusing throughout the full range of motion, you're not like cheating, if you cheat the exercise. So really trying to get the most out of it. And so that's why I really like this machine, because if you're intentional with it, you get a lot of great results from it.
And there's some directional that you do on that machine. The one we've got, of course, you've got the straightforward crunch, but actually doing a crossover crunch, letting go of one side if need to, and being able to do some rotation on there. I also like the brace on the back pad, because it does allow you to articulate that back and really, really, really fire the abs. You know, and most people wouldn't think of the variations that you could do, especially with the one that we have. I mean, you can do several variations with it. You can do some core twists with it, like you said, crossing over. It allows you to lock your feet in, which again just provides a little more stability, so you can focus more on the core and rather not just trying to keep your feet from swinging around. There's a lot of great benefits. It's something that you can come in here and do it by yourself. You don't need somebody to watch you. Make sure that your form is good, you're staying in a straight line. So I think all that is a great reason why this should be in somebody's program. Absolutely.
So kind of looking at some tips. One that I might have mentioned, but I'll say it again, is going slow. So we kind of touched on it with like eliminating the momentum, not swinging through the motion, but really taking your time with it. A lot of people neglect the negative portion of the movement that we've talked about before. So
60% of your development.
So when you crunch forward, not just allowing yourself to flop back, but really taking the time to go slow, bringing it back as slow as you can till you come back upright.
And focusing on those abdominals, letting them do the work.
And so really thinking about, like, as you're flexing over, slowly extending back up.
Right.
And then I think, doing that, you're going to prevent yourself from swinging because
Right.
you're controlling it, you're being intentional, but also you're allowing, like you said, that 60% is huge.
Massive.
And so, we're trying to be efficient here. We're trying to get the most bang for our buck. So that's a great way to be thinking about when you're doing the exercise.
Sure.
Just take it nice and slow. And you touched on this earlier in the podcast, but moderate to high reps.
Right.
Nobody needs to be doing a 1 rep max on their abs.
No, definitely not.
It's
Definitely
just,
not.
it's not, there's no point in doing that.
Not going to really penetrate the full abdominals doing
right.
that way. Yeah.
So nobody's going to be impressed by, I hit a 200-pound 1 rep max on my ab crunch today.
Out of all the things I've ever heard, I've never even heard that one, which is a good thing.
Right. And so I'm glad I've never heard that because we might need to have a talk with somebody and be like, let's just dial it back a little bit.
Don't get any ideas from this.
Yeah, we don't need anybody coming here next week telling us that we are talking about that. So no 1 rep maxes on the ab crunch machine.
Right.
It's not necessary, but keeping it moderate to high reps, so I'd say like 10 to 30 reps is a good range. Sure. No really need to go lower than 10, I'd say.
Right.
But again, like that higher rep range, because that is a muscle that gets used so often throughout the day.
Constantly.
It requires a higher workload to target it. Right. And so we're wanting to keep, the weight moderate, to medium. You don't need to go super heavy with it. Right. And again, the weight of the reps moderate to high reps.
And keeping that moderate weight, like you're saying, because you're going to go high rep. You're going to go high rep failure. So, and what we're talking about there, the reason I mentioned earlier about the dense muscles. Think about the muscles I'm talking about. Your forearms. Use them all day.
Yep.
What have you? Your trapezius up here. Basically, it holds your head up. Yeah. Using that all day, constantly. Your abdominals. If you had no abdominals, you couldn't stand up straight.
Right.
I mean, seriously, they're functioning all day. Calves, you're on your feet all day. The best is the heart. It never stops.
Nope.
And so very dense muscles. That's why they need the higher repetitions to really penetrate them. So
so that covers it for weighted crunch.
I'm telling you, and you didn't think we'd have much on that one, I'm sure. So listen, if you have any questions about this exercise or any others, or like I say all the time, if you have any questions and want us to check out your program, make it a little more effective for you, hey, give us a call. Reach out to Charlie at charlie@personaledgefitness.com or call us here at 251-341-0927. Be glad to just sit down with you, do a consult, and just look over your routine. Make it more effective if need be. Don't miss out on these machines, especially because it adds so much that you can load, and you can start really light. No matter what, it will help you progress to reaching your level of wellness. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.